Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And today we're going to begin our literature unit for the month of October. And the title of the book we're going to be talking about is A Room with a View. Who is the author of this book?
Ian Forster,
Ian Forster.
Brit. Yeah.
And the title of our article is The Choice Between Romance and Tradition in a Room with a View. So I guess that's what the book is all about here. You have to make a choice. Do you want love and romance, or do you want to stick with tradition and marry a really rich guy? Okay, that brings us to the beginning of our lesson for today. So let's listen now to the first part, and we'll come back to discuss it. In the early 1900s, Lucy Honeychurch, a young upper-class English lady, is vacationing in Florence, Italy, accompanied by her older cousin Charlotte. They're disappointed to have been assigned a room overlooking a courtyard rather than the worthwhile view of the magnificent Arno River. Two other guests, Mr. Emerson and his son George, offer to swap rooms. Charlotte declines, as it would violate social boundaries of the time, but later accepts at the urging of other guests. While walking alone along the Arno River, Lucy witnesses a clash between two men that results in a murder. She faints, but George appears and catches her. Upset by this experience, they have an intimate discourse. Lucy scolds herself for the tender emotions she has, but shouldn't for the lower-class free-thinking George. In the countryside, Lucy wanders alone on a violet-covered hill. George suddenly shows up. In this romantic setting, he passionately embraces and kisses her. Charlotte happens upon this inappropriate display and hastens Lucy away. Lucy's deeply embarrassed and hopes never to encounter George again. Back in England, Lucy is soon engaged to Cecil Vyse, a controlling, arrogant, wealthy man who sees Lucy in a traditional feminine role rather than as an independent person. In contrast, the Emersons believe in equality between the sexes. By coincidence, George and Mr. Emerson move into a nearby villa. Privately, George kisses Lucy again, intensifying her feelings for him. Acknowledging she can't tolerate Cecil's personality, Lucy breaks off the engagement. She intends to live a single life and take a trip to Greece. However, she runs into Mr. Emerson, who helps her confront what her soul truly wants, George's love. Lucy and George elope without her family's consent and honeymoon in the same hotel room with a view in Florence.
We've got a novel here to talk about, The Choice Between Romance and Tradition, and the novel's name is A Room with a View. I highly recommend it. I think it's very interesting. I love novels that talk about a period in history that was long ago. I just like to see how people lived in these older times. And I also like to see how they talked to each other, how they related, kind of what life was like back then, and imagine what it would be like. Because times back then were so different from modern times. So it's always fun to read a novel that is set in a period of history that was long ago. This is set in the 1900s, early in the 1900s. We've got some characters here. One is Lucy Honeychurch. You could say that she's the protagonist. The story really does revolve around her. She's the main character. She's young, she's upper class, and she's British or English. In England, in the UK, even today, they have different social classes, and you're born into a social class, and usually you stay there till you die. The reason why America was so different was that people could go to America, and you could be born poor and die in an upper class because you worked hard and you were successful. But back then in England, if you were born into a lower class, you just didn't get to, move up to a higher social class. So these classes didn't socialize together. That usually didn't happen. The upper class people would have a party, and the lower class would be their servants.
Right, so that's mainly what this novel is about, the clash between those different classes, the upper class and a lower class there. And it's a love story to boot, and it also takes place in Italy, so you get sort of the Italian flavor there. And then you get to go back to the English countryside as well. So again, that's the novel we're talking about, A Room with a View. I believe I incorrectly said before that it was published in 1906. It was actually 1908. So in the early 1900s, Lucy Honeychurch, a young upper-class English lady, is vacationing in Florence, Italy, accompanied by her older cousin Charlotte. So we've got two women here. We've got Lucy Honeychurch. She's young and she's upper class and she's a lady and she's on holiday. She's having a vacation in Florence. And with her is her older cousin, Charlotte, and her cousin accompanies her. She's with her, so we've got these two ladies together. They're cousins.
Back then, you could not travel alone if you were a young single woman. That was just inappropriate. You never did that. And you either had to go with a servant girl who was always with you to watch you to see if you were being a good girl, or you would get someone like Charlotte, an older cousin. So she is on vacation. As Tom said, on holiday is a British way of saying that. In America, we say, I'm going to go on vacation. But the Brits love to say, I'm going on holiday. So they're vacationing in the beautiful country of Italy, in the city of Florence. So they're disappointed to have been assigned a room overlooking a courtyard rather than the worthwhile view of the magnificent Arno River. So, as you know, when you check into a hotel, you want a good view, right? You want your window to show some beautiful scenic view as you look out. You don't want to open the curtains and see, the side of a building. Here, a courtyard is just an open space where people usually congregate or get together. It has bricks on there, but it's not beautiful scenery. So they were kind of bummed, kind of disappointed that they didn't get a beautiful room.
Yeah, the courtyard's probably nice, but again, they would rather have a view of the Arno River. And then in the same place where they're staying, we have two other guests, Mr. Emerson and his son George. They offer to swap rooms. Swap here just means to exchange. In other words, hey, we overheard you talking there, and we realized that you guys would like to have a room with a view of the Arno River. We have such a room, but, we've stayed in such a room before. We've seen the Arno River before. If you'd like, you can have our room and we'll take yours. We don't mind the view of the courtyard.
Now, social classes back then also had to stay on different floors. They just didn't mix together. So I'm going to guess that Mr. Emerson and his son George were on a different floor. So they couldn't just swap rooms. That was inappropriate. Everything was inappropriate back then. Charlotte declines or says no. She politely refuses because it would violate social boundaries of the time. Social boundaries just refer to the rules that society had come up with. They weren't laws. You wouldn't be arrested if you didn't keep all of these social boundaries. But if you violated them, somehow your reputation would suffer and people would look down on you. So Lucy had to be very careful to always keep her reputation very good, very clean. She wanted to marry well. And if you had a bad reputation, it was hard to get married if you were in that higher social class. So they said, no, we can't swap rooms. We can't exchange because of those boundaries. Now, boundary can also refer to some line that marks the limit of an area. Maybe there's a boundary between one state and another state, or counties in Taiwan. There might be a boundary line between two places. Well, here it's just it's an idea of a social boundary. They're just talking about the rules that you can't break.
Right, and boundary, of course, is a line between two different areas, and it's related to the word border, which is between two countries, like the border between the United States and Canada, for example. But you could also use the word boundary in a more general sense. And we've got social boundaries, okay? Basically, you can't accept something from a man when he asks you, no matter what it is, okay? That's probably the boundary there. If the man says, hey, you can have our room and we'll take yours. You're not supposed to say yes so fast because then the man might think you owe them something or something like that. So, of course, she refused at the beginning, but later she accepts at the urging of other guests. So the other guests in this pension they were staying in or this hotel or whatever, they said, go ahead and do it. It's not such a big deal. If you accept it, you're not really violating social boundaries. It's okay. If you want the room, take it. And people won't look down on you for accepting their proposal.
We're going to take a quick break now, guys. Listen to our Chinese teacher, and then we'll be back.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。我们今明2天要带大家来欣赏一个作品，叫做《窗外有蓝天》A Room with a View。 好，故事是这样子的，时间是发生在呢差不多20世纪初的时候，当时呢就有年轻的英国的上流社会，我们刚刚介绍的女主角 Lucy Honeychurch 跟她的表姐 Charlotte， 他们当时在意大利的 Florence 在度假。那么度假的时候呢，因为订的房间呢居然分配到的是一个俯瞰庭院的房间，就是 view 不太好，他们本来想要看这个亚诺河的风景，然后呢刚好就碰到了当时同样住在同样一个饭店，就是 Mr. Emerson 跟他的儿子 George， 他们就说我们可以交换房间呢。不过这个表姐 Charlotte 就直接先拒绝，因为呢违反当时社会的界限，也就是他们是上流社会的人嘛，所以就不要跟其他阶级的人有什么样的这个一些接触。不过后来呢，因为有其他的客人觉得没关系啊，然后后来他们就接受了这样子的一个交换。好，我们来看一下故事在第一段的地方。第一段呢，请注意一下第一句有出现一个分词构句哦。其实这一句话当中有2个动词，第一个动词呢就是 is vacationing 进行式，当时正在佛罗伦斯度假，后面出现了 accompanied， 其实本来应该逗点之后出现的是 and is accompanied by her older cousin Charlotte。所以主角 Lucy 本来当时在度假，而同样度假的这个同时是由表姐陪伴的，所以 and 直接删掉， be 动词变成 being， 但是它是功能性的字，没有意义，所以也直接删掉。同样这一段第4句先注意一个动词叫做 decline， decline 是婉拒的意思，那么后面逗点的 as 如果当连接词的时候，可能是 when、because 如同好像，那么根据文意推断，在这里是 because 的意思。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, let's continue to summarize our work of literature for the month of October, A Room with a View. So far, we've got Lucy and Charlotte. They're staying in Florence, and in the same hotel, we've got Mr. Emerson and his son George, and they eventually swap rooms because the ladies weren't satisfied with their original room. They did not like the view of the courtyard, but the men offered to swap rooms with them. Charlotte initially said no, but the guests urged her to go ahead and switch rooms, so they did. And now the ladies have a room with a view of the Arno River. And while walking alone along the Arno River, Lucy witnesses a clash between two men that results in a murder. So here we've got the word clash. It's being used as a noun. It's just kind of a conflict, a fight between two or more people. Clash could also be a verb. Clash also as a noun could refer to the punk rock band from London called The Clash. The Clash City Rockers, maybe you've heard of them. But in any case here, this is just a conflict, a fight, a clash between two men. And that results in a murder. One of the men actually gets killed.
So scary. Poor Lucy. She's not even used to seeing things like that, such violence. I mean, at least in modern times, we see murders on TV. What if you saw one right in front of you? So she sees it with her own eyes, this violent confrontation or disagreement, which results or ends in the murder of someone. One of the guys kills the other. She faints. She's so horrified. But then George appears. Cute George. He appears and catches her as she starts to faint. It's so romantic. Upset by this experience, and I would be too if I saw someone get murdered, they have an intimate discourse. These are two words that are kind of old-fashioned here to me, an intimate discourse. They have a little talk, a little chat together. Intimate just means very close. Maybe you're quite closely acquainted, you're familiar with this person, and so they're probably in a pretty friendly atmosphere. They probably like each other. They're probably attracted to each other. If you've seen the movie, you know they are. Discourse is just a conversation between people. We don't usually use it in spoken English, but it can be either written or spoken communication. Nowadays, it's more of a debate, I would say. But you can use it to describe a formal discussion of some sort of topic. But here, they just kind of sit together and talk for a while. He's trying to calm her down. She's very upset.
And it's a very personal conversation. It's very intimate. But Lucy scolds herself for the tender emotions she has, but shouldn't for the lower-class free-thinking George. So she did have this intimate conversation, this personal conversation with George. And she, of course, showed a lot of emotion in that conversation. But while she scolds herself, she kind of castigates herself. She kind of punishes herself for that. Oh, what are you thinking, Lucy? You should not talk to a person like that. He's from a different class. You shouldn't be talking that way with that kind of person. But at the same time, she actually probably recognizes that it was quite a constructive conversation.
We often use this word scold to describe what a mom or a teacher or an older brother or sister does to a younger child. If they do something wrong, they'll say, "Why did you do that? That was dumb." They're getting after somebody. They're angry. They're telling them they did something wrong. Well, she's giving herself scolding, you could say that, because she shouldn't have those feelings of attraction towards George. He's pretty cute, though, but he does come from a lower class, and back then, the lower class and the upper class just didn't get together. He's also free-thinking, so he tends to be non-traditional. He has his own way of thinking about the world. He's probably pretty modern. So, moving on, in the countryside, Lucy wanders alone on a violet-covered hill. If you do see the movie, you'll notice that the scenery is gorgeous. I would see the movie again just for the scenery. Well, as she's out there wandering or walking around, George suddenly shows up, and this is a very romantic setting. He passionately embraces and kisses her. Oh, this is a romantic part of the movie. So if you're doing something passionately, you're usually showing a lot of strong feelings towards someone. You probably love them. You're very intense about it. So that's a pretty fun part. And what happens after that, Tom?
Well, in this romantic setting, he passionately embraces and kisses her, and Charlotte, her cousin, happens upon this inappropriate display. Charlotte happens to see what's going on. Lucy, what are you doing, letting that man kiss you like that?
Oh!
So, of course, she hastens Lucy away. Here, hasten just means to hurry someone away. She kind of shuttles her away, I guess.
Pulls her away, yeah.
Yeah, pulls her away, accompanies her away. Let's get out of here. You're not supposed to be with this guy. But I think Lucy probably both enjoys it and hates it because she knows she's not supposed to. But on the other hand, she's really fallen for this guy. He is someone she can talk to, even though he's from a different different social class.
Yeah, I really enjoy how our author uses language that they would have used back then to hasten someone away. It's kind of old-fashioned too. You will see it though. You should know what it means. Back in England, so we're returning to England from our vacation in Italy. Lucy is soon engaged to Cecil Vyse. Ooh, he's controlling. Ugh, I don't like that kind of guy. Arrogant, very condescending. He thinks he's great, treats other people like they're not as important as he is. He's very wealthy. And he sees Lucy in a traditional feminine role rather than as an independent person. Yeah, a lot of the men back then saw a wife as just someone who took care of their house, took care of the kids, did the laundry, that sort of thing. They didn't have their own personal interests in life.
Right, so he's arrogant, of course. That means you think you know something when you really don't. So he's controlling, of course, and he's wealthy. And he thinks that she should play a traditional feminine role, and she should not be an independent person. She should not have her own career. She should be prepared for a traditional role as a housewife and mother and stuff like that. And in contrast, the Emersons believe in equality between the sexes, between the genders. So basically, the Emersons think that, hey, if a woman wants to be a housewife or a mother or a doctor or a lawyer, she should have that choice. There should be equality between the sexes, between the genders. And by coincidence, George and Mr. Emerson move into a nearby villa. So they didn't do this on purpose. It was just a coincidence. A coincidence is just something that happens without really any kind of control, but it seems to be something that you would have expected if somebody was planning it, but it wasn't really planned on. It just happened by coincidence, which is like 巧合. What a coincidence meeting you here in New York City. I did not expect to see you here. We're both from Taiwan. What are you doing here? What a coincidence.
By accident, by coincidence. How wonderful. It makes the book and movie exciting. So privately, George kisses Lucy, who is engaged again, intensifying her feelings for him. George is in love. Lucy's in love too. If you intensify something, you make it stronger and stronger and stronger. So her feelings have gotten stronger for George. You can understand why when you see who he is. He's just great. Acknowledging she can't tolerate or can't stand Cecil's personality. He's very arrogant and wealthy. That's okay. But controlling, bad. So she doesn't want to actually marry this guy. So she breaks off the engagement and she just feels like she'll have to live a single life alone. And she's about to take a trip to Greece. However, she runs into George's dad, Mr. Emerson, who comforts Lucy and really helps her decide what her soul truly wants, to confront what her soul or her spirit really wants, and that's George's love. So he talks Lucy into not going away on her own and coming back and marrying his son George. They elope, which means they go off together and they don't invite other people to come with them. So they elope and they get married, and her family doesn't even know about it. And their honeymoon is spent in the same hotel with a view in Florence. So it sounds like they returned to that room with a view for their honeymoon. Pretty cool ending.
And they lived happily ever after. And that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. It's time now to listen to our Chinese teacher.
那么当时呢，就是因为在度假嘛，所以 Lucy 呢，她有一天呢，就沿着这个 Honor River 正在散步，结果当时不小心刚好看到两个男人冲突，而且还产生了谋杀案，然后就晕倒了。可是这个时候呢，非上流社会的一个男生叫做 George， 就是我们刚刚说的这个 Emerson 跟他的儿子跟他交换房间的那位 George， 就接住他，然后呢，他们就有一个亲密的对话。但是 Lucy 那个时候呢，对他就有一种很特别的情愫，就有一点喜欢他了。好，我们来看一下第二段的地方。第二段的地方呢，在第一句有一个限定用法的关系子句哦，先行词是 a clash between two men， 那么关系子句从 that 到句尾的地方。好，那么在这一次的这个对话之后呢， Lucy 发现她好像有一点喜欢 George， 然后后来又有一次，因为在 布满紫罗兰的山丘上面漫步的时候 George 突然又出现，后来他们就有一些亲密的举动，但是刚好被 Charlotte 他的表姐看到了，然后呢他就心里就很不舒服，然后就觉得自己不应该喜欢 George， 因为他们不属于同样上流社会的人。好，我们来看一下第3段，漫步这个字出现在第1句 Lucy 后面 wander W-A-N-D-E-R 漫步走来走去 wander。 如果是另外一个常见的叫做 wonder W-O-N-D-E-R 则是纳闷不晓得，后面通常会加为什么 why wonder how 不晓得什么方式 wonder where 不晓得在哪里，那是纳闷的意思。好，那么接着之后呢，回到英国 Lucy 就跟她的这个 Cecil Vase 这个男生订婚啦。那 Cecil Vase 呢，基本上就是一个控制欲很强、傲慢又富有的男人，重点是他把 Lucy 是视为一个传统女性的角色。好，这句话很重要。最后面第4段这边的第1句先行词是 Cecil Vase 逗点之后同位语controlling, arrogant, wealthy man， who 到下面句有这个虚伪的地方左右括号起来哦，限定用法关系子句，中间的 see Lucy 接后面 as 它是 Lucy 是一个传统的角色，而不是 as 视为一个独立的人，所以传统女生嘛，就在家相夫教子嘛，其他的事情就交给男人来处理咯。好，那当然在这样的情况之下，相比之下 Emerson 父子呢则会觉得性别平等 gender equality 是很重要的。不过当时很巧，因为 Emerson 父子就搬进了附近的 villa 附近的别墅，然后他们又有一次，也就是 Lucy 跟 George 又有一次这个比较亲密的行为，然后呢 Lucy 就发现他根本就是很喜欢 George， 所以没有办法忍受他的未婚妻的个性，所以就解除了婚约。好，那么之后呢，他 Lucy 呢就跟 George 在未经家人同意之下就私奔了。我们最后面看一下最后这一段的地方，在第5句有一个分词构句哦，这里的 acknowledge 是承认 admit 的意思，那么逗点之后的 Lucy 才是它的主词，而最后面在第6句的地方 Mr. Emerson 之后有一个补充说明的关系子句，逗点的 who 到句尾可以左右括号。好，我们明天会针对这个文章做一些深入的讨论哦，记得准时收听，我是安娜，我们明天见。
That's it for today, guys. We talked about the plot of the book, A Room with a View.In our program next time, we're actually going to talk about some of the themes in the book and about the author for a bit as well. We hope you'll join us. For English Digest, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Tom. Goodbye.
Bye.